This is REL 105, Comparative Religion. In this class, we'll discuss new religions. Let's begin. Every discipline has its own vocabulary. In some areas of comparative religion, new religions are referred to as new religious movements, or NRMs. This can be a tricky area. NRMs can be difficult to track and analyze. There are at least two reasons for this. First, they have a tendency to come and go quickly. Some have staying power. At some point, if these groups grow, they can be classed as just religions. Admittedly, this is a relative concept. Normally, we think of official religions as having followers numbered in the millions, if not tens of millions. We'll discuss that concept more in just a little bit. Another thing that makes NRMs hard to track is the fact that they're sometimes secretive. As we attempt to analyze them, NRMs can often be broken down into two main types. The first we can call new paths. The other type draws from ancient wisdom or pre-existing thought. Author Roy R. Robson, in his book Think World Religions, suggests three common qualities of NRMs. First, they seek to answer questions for people who feel alienated from their world. In other words, if you're happy with the way things are, you don't tend to seek out new things. Second, they seek to leapfrog back in time to find a more pure form of religious experience. So once again, there is a sense that whatever the world is offering at the current time seems somehow hollow and artificial. Finally, NRMs often mix elements of different traditions. So some NRMs grow out of what we have called all roads religion. This assumes that different aspects of truth have been discovered in the past by different individuals or groups. A modern spiritual leader has somehow picked out the right elements and combined them. There are lots of NRMs, so we'll look at three of the best known. We'll spend time discussing each. First is the Unification Church, led by the late Sun Myung Moon. Next is the Wicca. Participants use the title modern-day witches. Finally, New Age religion. Followers of this movement seek to find unity with the cosmos for mind, body, and spirit. Let's look first at the Unification Church and its leader, the late Reverend Sun Myung Moon. Reverend Moon was born in Korea before it was split into North and South in the 1940s. He lived in the North. This region had been taken over by the Communists, who persecuted all forms of religion and government protest. Moon was imprisoned and tortured by the Communists. He escaped during the Korean War in the early 1950s. After his escape, Moon started receiving revelations from God. He came to believe that he was a chosen prophet of God, the third Adam. To understand this title, you have to understand the Christian faith. The Christian Bible starts in Genesis 1 with the creation of the world and the first humans, Adam and Eve. They fell into sin. The Apostle Paul taught that Jesus was the second Adam. Whereas the first Adam fell, Jesus did not. However, Reverend Moon didn't see it this way. Moon believes that he is the third Adam, the third opportunity for the human race to start fresh with God. So, it goes without saying that Reverend Moon reinterpreted Judeo-Christian beliefs. He looked back to the story of the garden and saw it as a metaphor for sexual sin. God, in Reverend Moon's view, had created Adam and Eve to start pure families. Satan tempted Adam and Eve into inappropriate sexual relations. Moon believed that the second Adam, Jesus, was also supposed to marry and have a family. However, he failed. So as the third Adam, Reverend Moon married and started the first perfect, pure marriage. This marriage took place in 1960 to Moon's wife, Hak-Ja Han. When people follow Reverend Moon, one of their goals is to marry other followers and have more perfect families. One of the best-known events of the Unification Church is mass marriages, where thousands of followers marry at the same time, usually in a stadium setting. Reverend Moon died in September of 2012, leaving operation of the Unification Church to his wife. The Unification Church has a number of critics. Some of those critics, of course, come from a Judeo-Christian perspective and disagree with this concept of a third Adam, among other things. Other critics say that the church is a cult. We'll talk more about cults in just a minute. Critics say that individuals come to the Unification Church and are exposed to brainwashing techniques much like what the North Koreans used during the Korean conflict. The process of brainwashing, it is said, leads to high levels of compliance, with large numbers of followers giving up their money and going into missionary service. The followers of the group see otherwise. They would see their belief system as genuine. We'll let you all research further. Whenever the topic of new religious movements comes up, an important question arises. Some see these movements as cults, so we have to ask, what is a cult? The author that we previously mentioned, Robson, suggests the following. As a note, I'll suggest that these are relative, but let's take a look. The first suggested test for a cult is the level of authoritarian leadership. To what degree do leaders of the cult exercise control over followers and their decisions? The suggestion is that in a cult, the level is very high, approaching total control over life. The next suggestion is aggressive outreach to others. Let's compare this with other movements. Our college allows student groups to form organizations and clubs that are recognized by the school. These organizations have a number of highly varied beliefs. They might be people who like to play chess. They might be people who want to run a business someday. In other cases, they have a religious foundation. There are Christian and Muslim groups recognized by the school, to name a few. Several times a year, the school sponsors a fair, where all these organizations can set up a table and invite other students to join. Usually the groups put up a sign, and someone sits at the table and smiles at passers-by. Some might walk out and strike up a conversation or hand out literature. None of this is considered extreme. Imagine, though, that you are walking down the street one day and an individual gets into your personal space and follows you for a long time, even though you ask them politely to leave numerous times. Now you're talking aggressive outreach. Another suggested feature of a cult is a system of indoctrination or brainwashing. For an example, let's look at the claims of some who have been exposed to the Unification Church and who later left. They say that it's normal to see the group advertised with some kind of seminar that looks like an interesting topic. When you attend, you are invited to other events. Nothing wrong so far. However, at some point, you are invited to a weekend retreat. If you go to the retreat, you are exposed to events at all kinds of odd hours. There are seminars and sporting events scheduled in the middle of the night. You find you're not getting enough sleep. At the close of the event, you're surrounded by people who beg you to stay longer. If you agree to stay longer, you're exposed to a lot more of the same. At some point, people find themselves conforming to most everything suggested by the group. You get the picture. Yet another suggested feature of cults is a short history. As we said, these groups tend to come and go. Finally, the groups appeal to disaffected people. As we said before, if you're happy with your life, you don't tend to seek out other possibilities. After considering all this, I think we need to ask another important question. What isn't a cult? I'll include some personal observations. I'd like to suggest that we are all surrounded by people who have beliefs about different things, and those people sometimes feel strongly about their beliefs. Sometimes these beliefs involve religious thought. Sometimes they don't. For example, I have friends who believe in a certain kind of diet. Some are vegetarians. Others believe in what's called a paleo diet, where people are encouraged to find out what our ancestors, the cavemen, ate. It's thought that the cavemen ate only protein and vegetables with little or no grain. Because of that, followers say, we should eliminate grain from our diets. If you meet people who hold any of these views, oftentimes they feel they've discovered something that can help everyone to be healthier. Because of this, they can be very zealous. But that doesn't mean they follow a cult. I want to suggest that having strongly held religious beliefs is also something that shouldn't immediately be labeled as a cult. Sometimes people have beliefs that don't follow the majority. They may disagree with their family and friends about all kinds of things. That alone doesn't mean they're part of a cult. A final thought here. I mentioned earlier that numbers come into play. Let's take Buddhism. If you listened to our Buddhism class, you know that at one point Siddhartha Gautama was a follower of the Hindu religion. However, he had new ideas. He started sharing those ideas and gained a following. When his followers were numbered in the hundreds or even the thousands, Buddhism might have been called a cult. However, at some point, the numbers grew and the beliefs of the Buddha persisted. So now, Buddhism is considered an officially recognized world religion. So admittedly, much of this is relative. Let's move on. Having discussed cults, we need to discuss a related problem: charlatans. Here is the dictionary definition: a person falsely claiming to have a special knowledge or skill, a fraud. We're talking about this in the context of religion, but once again, we should mention that charlatans pop up everywhere in association with every lifestyle. If you lived in America in the 1800s, you might see a wagon pull up into your town with colorful letters on the side saying, Dr. Smith's Wonder Elixir. The man driving the wagon, however, was not a doctor. It was someone who discovered that he could mix chemicals that today we would call controlled substances, things like cocaine and heroin. He would mix those things and throw in a shot of alcohol, and all of a sudden you had something that we call today snake oil. If you weren't feeling well, a shot of this stuff would make you feel better. It might even give you a sense of ecstasy. But if you were sick, it wouldn't heal you. You wouldn't discover until Dr. Smith was far away that you had been cheated. Worse, if you were really sick, say with cancer, you could even die. Well, Dr. Jones was a charlatan, a fraud. We see these in religion all the time, and they're very sad when they arise. Here's a topic that has come up occasionally as we've studied different religions. Sometimes people who claim to be part of a given religion will behave badly. Sometimes they're terrible. One of the questions we've tried to ask at these times is, are they behaving badly because they're following their religion, or are they behaving badly because they're ignoring the teaching of the religion that they claim? In this case, charlatans have no belief in the religions that they claim to support. When Jesus laid the groundwork for Christianity, he warned about such individuals. In the book of Matthew, chapter 7 and verse 15, we read this: "Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves." As a personal note, I find it sad that many people see charlatans and assume that all religion should be characterized by such individuals. Let's look now at another new religious movement called the Wicca. The Wicca are a group who seek to return to earlier forms of religion. They may refer to themselves as neo-paganism. They seek to bring civilization back to the days before it was, quote, corrupted, unquote, by monotheistic belief. Followers see the religions of the book as anti-nature, anti-women, and close-minded. These groups may or may not speak of a creator. If there is a supreme being, it is more like the concept of sacred mystery that we learned about with religions of place. Followers may worship gods such as Gaia, the Greek goddess of the earth, or they may worship Percuna, the Lithuanian god of thunder. The upper image in our slide is a photo of altar statues of the horned god and mother goddess owned by Doreen Valiente, a leader of the Wiccan movement. The neo-pagan movement also includes groups like the Druids, who worship at Stonehenge. They hold major events during times like the summer solstice, although we should note that there is debate about whether the Druids actually built this monument. Let's move on to New Age religion. This movement includes people who desire personal improvement and a better future for the world by developing their spiritual, physical, and psychological conditions. This group is very eclectic. Followers seek truth from numerous sources, both ancient and modern. An important principle for followers of New Age religion is correspondence. This theory says that objects from all regions of human, physical, and spiritual realms have relationships. We see here a picture of a man who uses various crystals to enhance his mental, spiritual, and physical state. On this slide, we see a table of suggested things that correspond with each other. These include the elements of air, earth, fire, water, and spirit. Angels are seen as spiritual beings who exist outside of their Judeo-Christian descriptions. You can see, for example, a classic relationship on this line. The angel Gabriel aligns with the element earth. Gabriel is the messenger from the eternal world to the earth. He is the one who spoke to the Virgin Mary and to the prophet Muhammad. As you can see, various senses also come into play. Also, as demonstrated on the previous slide, crystals or jewels are thought to resonate with forces in the cosmos. Finally, various animals hold places of power in this theory. You can pause the slide if you want to look at the various correspondences. Here's a fun topic: UFO-ology. We've all heard about UFOs, or unidentified flying objects. They're an interesting topic all by themselves. But in 1968, Swiss author Erich von Däniken published the book Chariots of the Gods. In this book, von Däniken looked at various archaeological finds from around the world and noted that they shared commonalities with things associated with space travel. He suggested the possibility that these associations were caused by ancient aliens who visited the Earth long ago. When primitive humans saw the aliens and their technology, the humans assumed the aliens were gods. Let's look at a few examples, and we'll let you decide. On our first slide, we see some ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. Among the various images and symbols, we see something that looks like the classic depiction of a flying saucer. It's near a pyramid with a circle over the top. Perhaps this was a massive ship that appeared near the pyramids thousands of years ago. On the other hand, you would think that such an event would show up in other places, lots of them. Perhaps someone was chiseling something like an eye, or a hat, or any number of things, and they slipped. It's hard to erase stone, but you never know. In this slide, we see an object made of gold. It looks like an aircraft of some kind. Recall during our discussion of native religions of North America, we saw a medicine wheel that covered acres of ground. At that time, we asked the question, why would people do that? In a place called Nazca in Peru, we see a series of mysterious lines called the Nazca Lines. There are about a dozen of them, forming interesting images, such as the hummingbird on the right. The images cover almost a kilometer. Van Daniken suggested that the lines are best seen from the air, and that they were drawn by aliens. Ancient humans, he said, saw the ships that the aliens used and incorporated images into their culture, hence sculptures like the Golden Image. However, skeptics see other possibilities. The golden object is small, the size of a piece of jewelry. If you rotate it and stand it up, it sort of looks like a bumblebee. We've all seen jewelry that looks like bumblebees, dragonflies, crickets, and the like. Maybe this is just a piece of jewelry. As to the Nazca Lines, a famous skeptic named Joe Nickell suggested that humans could easily draw such objects, and he actually did so using simple tools available to the Peruvians at the time the drawings are thought to be made. All the drawings can be seen from neighboring hills. Skeptics suggest that the Nazca Lines are simply a very interesting type of art that was very much created by humans as they were developing early skills in mathematics and surveying. But again, you never know. In this slide on UFO-ology, we see a stone carving from the Aztecs. It depicts two images. First is a man using some sort of breathing apparatus. Is this an alien visitor who needed help breathing our atmosphere on Earth? The other image is a rodent-like creature who looks like he's operating some kind of control panel. Was it an alien operating a sophisticated computer, or was it an ancient visitor operating his spacecraft? Once again, though, skeptics suggest other possibilities. We've all seen pictures of people using devices that help them inhale vapors. These vapors range from tobacco to marijuana and onto other stronger substances. All of this was available in the Aztec region. Perhaps this is just an image of someone getting high. Perhaps the image on the right is a rodent getting into a grain reserve. Those kinds of things can be very annoying in an agricultural society. If the rodent looks more sophisticated, maybe it's the equivalent of our modern-day Mickey Mouse or Rocky the Flying Squirrel. Maybe the Aztecs had cartoon characters too. Let's look at one more. In this slide, we see an ancient painting that clearly shows alien beings visiting the Earth. No, wait. This is a painting by artist Pablo Picasso. It's called Three Musicians. It's from a time when European artists felt led to move from concrete images of people to what we today call abstract art. It's considered very sophisticated. Could it be that when we see images from early civilizations that don't fit our notions of what they should look like, that we're merely practicing ethnocentrism? Maybe we're starting with the assumption that the peoples of those civilizations weren't as intelligent as we think we are. Maybe those ancient civilizations were further ahead than we imagined. Maybe they, too, were capable of sophisticated things like abstract art. You are the ladies and gentlemen of the jury. You can decide. On our last slide, we see a movement that started, at least in modern Western culture, in the 1960s. It's called psychedelic spirituality. The name associated with this is Timothy Leary. Recall in our class on Native American religion that some cultures sought to enhance their view of the eternal by using substances such as peyote. Researchers and just curious people tried this. Scientists found ways to strengthen this experience with drugs like LSD. This expanded to a broader culture where rock bands were seen as priests leading the world into a new age of awareness. The theme of the day was Tune In and Drop Out. Unfortunately, I have to mention the skeptical side of this. Decades have passed since these times. Sadly, there is a trail of people who really hurt their brains with these experiences. Some committed suicide. Some wound up in mental institutions. The lucky ones have gone on with life. Most of the survivors I've heard of regret their experiences. We'll have to close our class by simply saying, please don't try this. That was our class on new religions. We hope you enjoyed it. Check out our other classes on comparative religion.